trends. Welcome, Manu. Great to have you here.
Well, thank you, Shamana. And you've been doing this for 17 years, but looks like you haven't aged a single day.
Oh, that's very nice of you. I've aged plenty. So, Manu, let's start with, we have had Inventus here before, but we haven't had you. So if you could introduce yourself a little bit, whatever you want to share with the audience. I know you, of course. That would be a good start, and then we'll get into investment thesis and so on.
No, absolutely. Thank you. We've been doing this for now 15 years, at least with the firm. I was prior to this mostly as an entrepreneur and operator. So I did a couple of startups, and I was at Google in the early days, and investing became part of it while I was still operating, and then sort of fell into this almost by accident. I said no for 5 years, and I finally said yes. And it's been fascinating. It's, there's nothing more exciting than spending time with very optimistic founders. Every day is different. It helps my ADHD quite a bit by having to switch context all the time to be able to help founders. And all of our team members have been engineers and have actually built companies in the past. So we're founders who have become investors. So more than anything else, we understand the background of what it takes to build something. We call ourselves dream merchants more than VCs. Somebody has a dream, and we're willing to buy the dream. Maybe I'll stop there, and then we can sort of get into Q&A.
Yeah. So, Manu, I think at the moment in these roundtables, the discussion that we are focusing on, of course, we could talk about all kinds of things, but I think the most contemporary discussion is about AI and what's happening in AI. There's lots of confusion. There is lots of trends to discuss. So let me start us off with your vision or your perspective on how you are investing in AI. What is the firm's investment thesis vis-a-vis AI?
Sure. We've seen this music play before, whether it was the internet revolution or the cloud, mobile, social, and AI is just one of many trends that have the underpinnings. So at the end, for enterprise especially, it is about productivity gains, right? Is it a tool? Is it more of a hype, right? If it's improving productivity, and these things take time, we're in a hype cycle. We've seen these hype cycles before, but I think there is, unlike blockchain, which was truly a hype cycle, and still, it may make fundamental changes, but the promise wasn't delivered. I think with AI, it's been worked on for more than a few decades, right? And I think this is the culmination of lots of work over many decades. And there's still a lot more to go. So we're actually very excited. I think there's fundamental productivity shifts. Last year, lots of CIOs and enterprises were making sort of experimental budgets, trying to figure out what to do. I think this year, next, I think there's actual budgets being moved into this, and you're seeing pretty impressive rise in companies. And so it won't just be Jensen Huang and NVIDIA making all the money. I think there'll be lots of companies that will sort of come out in the next few years.
Yeah, and I think the difference between blockchain and AI is that AI is more akin to the SaaS revolution, in that SaaS basically changed the architecture of all business workflows. And I think AI is going another rev into the business workflows and changing those workflows, creating tremendous productivity gains. And I think in due course, it's going to be real automation coming through AI, which is what makes it so attractive. And we kind of know how to invest in business workflows, whether it's enterprise or mid-market or small business. Investing in businesses that enhance business workflows is something that Silicon Valley knows very well how to do, India knows very well how to do, Europe knows very well how to do, and that general thought process is what's playing in AI, with one exception. And let me ask you what you are seeing and how you're processing this exception, which is usage-based pricing, right? SaaS became so popular because it was subscription pricing. And subscription business models are very attractive to investors, whether it's public market investors or private market investors, extremely popular because of its predictability and the fact that it's recurring. So you book something, it stays on the book, and then you add on top of that, and that stays on the book for years and years and years. So from a P&L point of view, it's a very attractive model. But usage-based pricing does not have that same level of predictability. What are you seeing?
Yeah, you're correct. I mean, I think predictability is important. I think as more budgets get shifted, as CIOs and CFOs, especially CFOs, because they're the ones who want predictability. Yeah, even going back to the SaaS world, the founders found a solution that I could do monthly pricing and his seat license, and it was easy to predict. But most VCs actually insisted that you should do 12-month contracts, right? So they were still, paid up front. So I think, even though it was built for that flexibility, but cash was important, and most companies ended up doing annual prices and pushed customers to do annual license pricing. So it was sort of similar to the previous models as well. So I think there'll be multiple ideas that will come through depending on the solution you're solving, right? For example, I'll give you an idea. Like, I've been talking to a company we're looking to invest in that does sales automation, actually makes the entire sale happen from finding the leads to actually making the phone call, closing the lead, and actually booking the revenue, right, all the way through, right? Now, what the founder has come up with is like, hey, I will charge you X dollars per month, just like an employee, right? And this person, the number of phone calls you're making, you can count the number of hours. There's 40 hours a week at a regular employee works. I'm going to charge you accordingly, right? So there is predictability in that thing, right? It's $1,000 a month, for example, and I'm going to work 160 hours a month, and that's my pricing, right? You may be paying $5,000 or $10,000 for a sales person, and then commissions on top. And so I think in that situation, that pricing model works well.
Yeah.
Right. But if you look at agents across the board, if I can do 100% employees work, I can't just charge you for one thing. So I think other models, for example, I have a minimum pricing and then I have usage on top of that. So I can predict, I can buy these bands, right? I can buy 10,000 credits. And if I consume the credits, I could buy more credits, or maybe I have a floor and something else. I think there'll be, pricing, I think, is separate than the value being delivered, right?
Yes.
If I can predictably,
but pricing is derived from value, though.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there'll be experimentation. I've seen lots of different ideas coming through, and then it could be like, hey, well, you pay for your processing power, right? Whatever, you use your OpenAI license or your Gemini license, and then I'm going to charge you on top of that, so that I'm not taking the cost of the underlying model cost, right? So I've been seeing across our portfolio all these models being tested, and I think 2 or 3 will come through. But usage-based is not new. This is how we started, right? When you look at supercomputers, if you wanted to buy time, how many hours, how much usage you had. Cell phone pricing in the 1980s and early 1990s were all usage-based. The number of minutes you called, the text, you were charged accordingly. So in some sense, I think we've seen this music before. So it's not new,
yes.
And it's.
But there has been if you look at Wall Street likes predictability and in revenue recognition. So it's not like the cell phone companies get valued at the same level as the Atlassians and the ServiceNows. So yeah, okay. So let's talk about the type of AI companies that you are investing in, and we could do some case studies first of what you have invested in, and if you could share with us in what stage and state you encountered these companies, and what is it about them that made you write the checks?
Sure. I can maybe give you a couple examples and go into it. So a company called Scientific Space, and we typically invest in pre-seed or seed. So that's it's usually a couple of founders. Maybe they have a better product working, some early product market fit, or just a PowerPoint slide, depending on where we encounter them. We do mentor founders for sometimes for weeks or months just to sort of understand where, them more than the product. So getting hastily into bed with somebody else is not our style typically, right? We do like to marinate, understand. So in this case, the founder was building a very AI native application to help researchers, whether you're in pharmaceuticals or in a laboratory or in a engineering company. Typically, you would have to go through thousands and thousands of articles, figuring out what body of work has already been done, and then trying to figure out how do you build the next piece, right? And so everything from protein molecules to the next AI models, right? And there's millions of published articles every year, about 2 to 3 million. And so the body of work you have to go through, the languages, some things in German or Italian or French, and so what would take weeks and weeks of work, sometimes months, is now getting done in minutes, right? And because they're very finely tuned to research and pieces, their quality of work is 10, 20, 100x better than any large language models, because large language models are very horizontal. This is very specific down to that body of work that's being researched. So that company, I mean, the ROI is very meaningful. They've gone from 0 to $8 million in ARR in a very short period of time.
And when you look at a company like this, that is essentially a vertical AI company, is it built on top of a particular LLM that's off the market?
Yeah, so they initially built their own large language models, and then they have substituted that for models as they've sort of come up to par, right? And so rather than spending your R&D dollars on building those models, but they're focused on more the small language models and tuning on top of that stuff so that they have differentiation besides that.
And what is the degree of defensibility and how do you gauge that degree of defensibility when something is built on top of an off-the-shelf LLM, but is focused on a vertical application?
Yeah, so you're using the large language models off the shelf that are more for once the results are done to be able to publish the content, right? But the actual reasoning and stuff is actually being built on the data sets they have and the analysis and all the other pieces that are built on top. So that's one part. So your proprietary access to data and pieces that the large language models don't have. So that's your data moat, right? And the other part is about the workflows that researcher needs, right? So it's not just the fact that I need to get that research done. I need to figure out, the workflows, collaboration with other researchers. I need to be, so for example, if I have questions on that article that I just read, well, can I get in touch with the author of that article? It's actually a social networking site also being built underneath it. I need to be able to collaborate, maybe even hire, other pieces. So there's a whole bunch of other defensible sort of pieces that come through. So the actual reasoning and stuff is just one part of a much bigger workflow. Yeah.
Okay, let's do another one.
Yeah. Another company, LiveSite, very boring business. They're actually in project management, native AI for project management for large construction companies, right? Imagine you're building a tunnel or a high-speed railway train from Ahmedabad to Bombay, for example. That's a good example. Yeah, you'll have like a few hundred project managers that are making sure that every part of the project is actually getting done, right? And if one piece of steel is delayed, well, that slows down everything else, and there's a lot of cost delays and lots of fines involved. So this company basically replaces all those human project management labor in between, and instead of a 200-person team, you can do the same thing with 10 or 15 people, and the software does the rest. Now, just to show the value of this, I mean, their last contract was $5 million plus in India, right? And so the customers are seeing actual real value, and they built AI native up from front. So it's not sort of retacking what the traditional SaaS software workflows. So this reimagines the entire workflow very differently and actually delivers that value. So So they're getting really good, hard, large contracts from places in the world that would never pay that much money.
Mm. And what is the AI angle in this? How are they using AI?
So, they built their own the data sets, and they've kludged together multiple different LLM multimodal models to be able to make sense of this the whole pieces. But it's the actual training sets of having done this with thousands and thousands of other project managers to be able to figure out what works well. And then using, instead of a linear process, what all Gantt charts do, right? It's like, if I do this, then this is what happens next. They do circular workflows. So anytime one thing is delayed, impact over everything else get reassessed very quickly. Whereas the traditional charts would require a lot of human intervention to sort of use their judgment to fix things, right? Mm-hmm. So all the previous knowledge of judgment on how things will impact the downstream effect of a project can now get done in seconds with the AI models, right?
Okay, interesting. But more of a workflow though than the LLM kind of application. This one is real workflow. There's a tremendous amount of real workflow management going on, which is defensible. Vertical workflow is defensible.
Yeah.
Manu, I know your firm has a particular emphasis on the India Silicon Valley corridor. Could you talk a bit about how you work with founders and, geographically, how do you like them to be configured or approaching you and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our thesis had been with the India-US corridor. So whether the Indian founders moved to US for university and then they stayed on to actually build a company here, or they stayed back in India and built a company. So it didn't matter where you ended up at. Now, we do seriously prefer companies, even if they're built in India, that they're US headquartered or Delaware. The legal structure in the US is far simpler. If your designs, and we prefer companies that are building for the global market, not just for the India market, because India's software market is still, it's a decent size, is growing, but it's nowhere close to the global, the US markets especially. So we prefer our founders to have sites here as well. We don't do much consumer domestic in India because those the companies can stay in India, and so we had a sister company in India called Athira Ventures, and so that's how we split up. So we focus more on global Indian
B2B. Global B2B is done out of Inventus, is what you're saying.
But we also do consumer companies as well, but they're focused globally as well. But they're mostly US, founders like Poshmark. With Manish was based here, right? We have Flam. The founders might be in India, but they're moving here as well. And that's a sort of a consumer / B2B, B2B2C company as well. Okay. So we'll make exceptions, but our traditional is probably 70% enterprise, about 25% is consumer.
Okay. And what are you seeing in your deal flow? We've talked about what you're investing in. What trends are you picking up from your deal flow? Whether it's Indian deal flow or US deal flow, what are you picking up?
Yeah, I mean, almost everything has been repackaged as AI, and so, I think going through just a simple wrapper on an LLM to defensible moats, and it's also as the underlying models are improving, a lot of these moats that may be relevant today may not be relevant 6 months from now, right? And I think so. There's a difference in trying to sort of tease those out. And by the way, this is no different than some of the work we had to do when everything became blockchain all of a sudden overnight, or everything became social or P2P sharing right now. So I think founders are very good at changing or repurposing what they have to what the trends are available in the market, right? And I think it's differentiating between things that have real legs versus something that may not be valid a few months from now. I think that's what our job is, but it's not like we'll always get that correct, right? Because it's not just the the foundational models, whether it is today is OpenAI or Gemini or Anthropic, but in the previous world it was other platform providers that also had the same thing, and as they would add more features, it would kill companies or they would acquire them. So I think we have a large group of people besides our core team that get really involved with our startups and diligencing actually recommendations. So we have like I said, we always have this focus on spending and mentoring founders and really getting to know them beyond just the business plan.
So a couple of thoughts based on what you said. One is we're hearing a lot about human in the loop and AI services. And my read is that this is actually a strength for the Indian founders, because India has had a long history of building services businesses. So if you have to layer on top of your core IP a services arm, that is easily done in India, and there's a lot of management, experience management and so on available. So that's one trend that I have seen. The other observation I'm picking up is, the workflow moat, or the domain specific stuff that are particular to that domain, including certain databases, like if you have a marketplace of sorts, you have all kinds of AI stuff happening within that, but the real value of a marketplace where people who can transact on certain things are present, that is a moat, right? A marketplace where transactions are happening, that is a moat. Workflow is a moat. If there is a certain kind of workflow that is happening that is specific to that domain, that is defensible. And those are, in some ways, those are much more defensible businesses than a pure wrapper around OpenAI.
Yeah.
So I think for those of you who are listening and who are, starting to think about how you position your companies, keep these nuances in mind so that you build something defensible and don't get sucked into the next rev of the LLM itself that the large companies are going to inevitably invest in and make happen. So don't become a roadkill to LLM upgrade.